I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Lindsay Unfiltered, and you know why we're here. You know why we're here. I know why we're here. We need to wrap up this Cassie document versus P. Diddy. This is part of our series on scandals. C has been Cassie and P. Diddy, and we've done something special for the C. We're reading the entire lawsuit, giving our unfiltered opinions on the entire lawsuit here. And we have found out some triggering things, some horrific things, some strange things, guys, when it comes to the nature of P. Diddy and Cassandra Ventura's relationship. The fact that they hid it so well is crazy. For 10 years, no one knew the nature of their relationship. And that leads me to lead the question of how many relationships in Hollywood is this going on with, where there's really abusive behavior going on in the relationship and it's just swept under the rug. I can say this is not the only case. In my opinion, this is definitely not the only case. There's more cases like this. But we're going to break down the last 15 pages of this lawsuit, and we're going to continue with our series of A to Z scandals. The next one will be D, and I'm really interested and I'm really intrigued about the D series. I think you guys are going to love the D. It takes a little bit of research on my end, but I feel like it's going to be really good. I do want to thank everyone who's been watching, who's been engaging with the videos, sharing the videos, liking the videos, commenting. Last 28 days we're around 3,000 views, so that's good. That's a great start. But I always push myself higher and higher and higher. I'm excited, and I love to share, and I love to talk, and I love to give opinions. So I thank you guys a lot. Anything that you think can help, I appreciate it. With that being said, let's dig into this document. The last 15 pages, this video may be closer to an hour. So buckle in, get some popcorn, and enjoy this. This is my first time reading through it with you guys here. So let's get into it without further ado. Miss Ventura was terrified as she began to fully comprehend what Mr. Combs was both willing and able to do to those he believed had slighted him. In 2015, Ms. Ventura spoke to a popular music manager at an after-party in a hotel suite in Las Vegas. Mr. Combs saw her speaking to this manager and sternly told her to step into the bedroom adjoining the suite. In the bedroom, Mr. Combs beat Ms. Ventura severely. She ran from corner to corner of the room, trying to avoid Mr. Combs beating and kicking. When she tried to lock herself in the bathroom, he pushed through and punched and kicked her while she curled up under the toilet. Her screams were drowned out by the loud music playing in the outside area of the hotel suite. 100% believe it. We know that, and we've witnessed, and he has confessed to kicking, punching, stomping. We've seen all of that, so very believable. When Mr. Combs, head of security and assistant, saw Miss Ventura after assault, they began to cry. What are you crying for? What are you crying for? You knew that he was doing this to her. You knew that he was doing this to her. For how long? Why are you crying now? You did nothing. Miss Ventura had 2 black eyes, a burst and bruised lip, and a huge welt on her forehead. Upon seeing the results of his vicious attack, Mr. Combs immediately took steps to conceal his wrongdoing. He forced Miss Ventura to stay at his home in Holmby Hills, along with one of his sons. While there, Mr. Combs FaceTimed Miss Ventura and stated, "You gotta go up and put more makeup on. My son can't see you like that." She did put makeup on, per Mr. Combs' demands. Miss Ventura felt that she had no choice but to obey her abuser, even though security guards, assistants, and friends saw the situation she was in. No one dared to help her or speak up on her behalf. She therefore had no choice but to remain subservient. Later in 2015, while shooting a movie in Cape Town, South Africa, Miss Ventura began a flirtatious relationship with an actor. She spent New Year's Eve with this actor. Mr. Combs soon found out. Mr. Combs called the actor and threatened him. The actor proceeded to call Miss Ventura and tell her, "You really need to call Mr. Combs." In or around March 2016, during a FO at the Intercontinental Hotel in Century City, Los Angeles, Mr. Combs became extremely intoxicated and punched Miss Ventura in the face, giving her a black eye. This is the video. This is the video footage that came out. After he fell asleep, Miss Ventura tried to leave the hotel room, but as she exited, Mr. Combs awoke and began screaming at Miss Ventura. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. He grabbed her and then took 2 glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her, causing glass to crash around them as she ran in the elevator to escape. She managed to get into the elevator, and when she got to the lobby, quickly took a cab to her apartment upon realizing that her running away would cause Mr. Combs to be even angrier with her and completely stuck in this vicious cycle of abuse. Miss Ventura returned to the hotel with the intention of apologizing for running away from her abuser. When she returned, hotel security staff urged her to get back in a cab and go to her apartment, suggesting that they had seen the security footage showing Mr. Combs beating Miss Ventura and throwing glass at her in the hotel hallway. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs paid the Intercontinental Century City $50,000 for the hallway security footage from that evening. So anybody can be bought, any entity can be bought, any corporation can be bought. Just a dollar sign to someone's loyalty, to someone's morality. After this, Miss Ventura left her home in Comstock and went to hide away at a friend's home in Florida. James Cruz, never heard of him before, president of Bad Boy Management, tracked Miss Ventura down and told her that her single would not be released if she did not answer Mr. Combs' phone calls. That's not how that works, is it? Maybe it is. A woman who worked at Sony Music reached out to her with a similar ultimatum concerning her record. Incredibly, Mr. Combs even convinced one of his attorneys to call Miss Ventura at this time. The lawyer told Miss Ventura that it's in your best interest to call Mr. Combs back. No, it's in his best interest to leave her alone. Each time Miss Ventura tried to run away, Mr. Combs and his powerful network would force her back to him. Mr. Combs' tight hold over her life had irreparably damaged her friendships. Around 2008, when Miss Ventura was with her friend Carrie Morgan in her house, Mr. Combs used his key to Miss Ventura's house and came in unannounced. He and Miss Morgan had an altercation during which Mr. Combs threw a hanger at Miss Morgan. Upon information and belief, the incident resulted in a settlement between Mr. Combs and Miss Morgan, and Miss Ventura ended up paying Miss Morgan additional funds in an attempt to resolve the dispute between her close friend and her abusive and controlling boyfriend. The relationship between Miss Ventura and Miss Morgan has been strained since this time. Seeing the extreme measures Mr. Combs took to keep a tight hold on Miss Ventura and isolate her from her support network, and having experienced the repercussions of rejecting his demands, Miss Ventura felt like saying no to Mr. Combs would cost her something. Her friends, her family, her career, or even her life. Mr. Combs' essay as Miss Ventura. By 2017 and 2018, Miss Ventura became desperate to leave Mr. Combs and his abuse of her. She recognized if she stayed with him, she would never be able to have a successful career or ever be physically and mentally safe. She therefore became determined to completely break away from Mr. Combs and his cycle of abuse and made concerted efforts to avoid him. In September 2018, she joined Mr. Combs for a dinner at an Italian restaurant in Malibu, California, for which she believed would be a discussion about concluding their relationship for good. I wonder if it was Olive Garden. It was definitely not Olive Garden. Olive Garden is not, they're not going to Olive Garden. It wasn't. After dinner, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura returned to Miss Ventura's home, which was paid for by Mr. Combs. I understand it was paid for by him, but it's still hers. You can't say, I'm going to buy you a house, honey, and then say, I bought you this house. Like, you bought her this house. That's correct. It's hers. Don't buy something for someone, then dangle it over their head when you don't get your way with them. Just don't buy it for them. She had her own money. From what I'm concerned, she had her own money. She had a 10 record label deal, which I've never heard in the history of nothing. So, Mr. Combs forced himself into her apartment and tried to kiss Miss Ventura. She told him to stop and attempted to push him away. Mr. Combs then forcibly pulled off Miss Ventura's clothing and unbuckled his belt. He proceeded to SA Miss Ventura while she repeatedly said no and tried to push him away. Soon thereafter, Miss Ventura took steps to completely separate herself from her longtime abuser, including by leaving the home that he paid for and returning the car that he purchased from her. Despite moving away, Miss Ventura's address was posted online in early 2019, leading to fears for her safety. Miss Ventura, who was under immense duress during the months after Mr. Combs took all steps possible to entirely remove herself from her abuser's ambit, including by entering into contracts to end her record deal with Bad Boy Entertainment. Mr. Combs and physical abuse of Miss Ventura has caused her lifelong harm. As a result of the immense trauma Miss Ventura endured for over a decade with Mr. Combs, she has suffered and continues to suffer from immense emotional distress. Following her escape from the cycle of abuse and sex trafficking she endured, she struggled with the physical and mental manifestations of her trauma. The birth of her 2 children, however, allowed her a new lease on life and gave her purpose. She credits her children with saving her from the trauma that consumed over a decade of her life. Cassie could have easily not been here. Cassie could have easily not been here. Let's just put it like that. Diddy as well. With all of that they've done and been through, it's a miracle that she's still standing. You know what I'm saying? So it takes a lot for somebody to actually see the other end of that, and for her to get so much support, for people to push so hard behind her, I think is everything that she needed in a time like this, because I don't think she thought it would go that way when she was being kicked in that hallway. She didn't think the people would stand for her. She didn't think that. She was being abused. She was like, I'm nobody. But she actually has a voice. She's an advocate. And I feel like you literally single-handedly started a movement. Cassandra Ventura, you started a movement. An entire movement. And that is powerful. It may have taken you a long time to do it. It may have taken you 10 years in the making or however long, but you took down someone who is extremely rich and powerful, right? And you started an entire movement. Like, you're Rosa Parks worthy, honestly. You really are. You're Rosa Parks worthy, because all of those women and men that came out behind you, they weren't going to do it. They were never going to do that. You were the catalyst that started that fire. You know, they wanted to say something, but they just And then there's some other people out there that's probably struggling with something that are going to say something. You started an entire movement, and that is more power than anyone that's abusing or not seeking help for anger management issues will ever have. You have more power than a lot of people right now. So that in itself is absolutely gratifying. So, you know, we didn't hear about you. We didn't know what happened. We just kind of thought, like, oh, Cassie fell off. She had one amazing song, super gorgeous. Like, you know, we thought that P. Diddy fumbled. You didn't fumble. He fumbled. Honestly. Except for the months when she was pregnant with her children, Miss Ventura struggled with her addictions to drugs and alcohol. Addictions that were established and fueled by Mr. Combs. She turned to substances to drown out the memories of her abuse. Without being intoxicated, she suffered from horrific nightmares of the forced sexual acts that Mr. Combs demanded she participate in during the regularly scheduled FOs, and of the physical beatings that she endured during the relationship. She had difficulty eating or sleeping, and her relationships with her family suffered. During this time, she frequently had thoughts of ending her life. I would imagine so. Honestly, I would imagine so with everything I'm hearing. But the only thing I do want to say with the framing of this paperwork, you can say the addictions were established and fueled by P. Diddy, but honestly, I don't think P. Diddy is the reason why she was an addict. I honestly don't think that. I'm not going to put that on P. Diddy, because, you know the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I can lead you to a drug, but I can't make you do it. You know, he offered her a pill. She asked what it was. He didn't tell her. I honestly don't know, and it wasn't mentioned in this document this far, that P. Diddy ever forced her to do drugs. So I think it was more one of those things, I need to cope. So I don't think it was fueled by him. It was pushed in her face by him. He put it on the menu. But at the end of the day, the choice to pick it up was hers. So I tend to have an issue when people say things like, oh, she wasn't on this until she met him, or he wasn't doing this until we got around that group of guys, or, you know, honestly, you are the one. You are the last one between you and that substance, right? Okay. All right, 142. To rebuild her life and her career, Miss Ventura needs to completely reinvent herself. She checked herself into inpatient treatment at a rehabilitation center where she first confronted the extent of the trauma she lives with. She has required intensive therapy and other medical care to recover from Mr. Combs' abuse, and she will forever live with the physical and psychological repercussions of the over a decade of violence, fear, and exploitation she endured. Although Ms. Ventura was unable to speak up against the years of abuse she endured at the hands of Mr. Combs, she has since been able to rebuild her life and confront her trauma. Thanks to the passage of the New York Adult Survivors Act and California's Sexual Abuse Accountability and Cover-Up Act, she's now ready and able to also confront her abuser and to hold him and those who enable his abuse accountable for their actions. Okay, first cause of action. So you guys see this trafficking under 18. What does that mean? Okay, I'm kind of concerned about this right here. Look at this. What? Against all defendants? Okay, we're going to have to break that down. Plaintiff is a victim of traffic within the meaning of 18. Oh, the meaning of 18. The meaning of 18, not under 18. Gotcha. The defendant's acts and omissions, taken separately and or together, as outlined above, constitute a violation of 18. Specifically, defendant Sean Combs perpetrated trafficking of Ms. Ventura by requiring her to engage in forced acts in multiple jurisdictions, and all defendants benefited from Mr. Combs' venture in holding Ms. Ventura, an artist signed with defendant Bad Boy Records and otherwise employed by other defendant Doe corporations, captive to Mr. Combs' demands and desires. At all relevant times, defendants participated and facilitated the harboring and transportation of plaintiff for purposes of induced by force, fraud, or coercion. Woo! The defendant corporations have financially and otherwise benefited as a result of these acts and omissions by keeping Mr. Combs, the volatile and explosive owner of the defendant corporation, satisfied. It benefited from facilitating his behavior to the extent it kept the mercurial music mogul happy, and it kept Ms. Ventura obedient to Mr. Combs in the corporation's interest. Defendants Combs and defendants Bad Boy Records, Bad Boy Entertainment, and Doe Corps 1 through 10 formed a venture as defined by 18, given that they constituted a group or more two individuals associated in fact, whether or not a legal entity, as a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful conduct as alleged herein above. Plaintiff has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress and anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and consequential damages. She also seeks reasonable attorney's fees as provided under 18. Second cause of action, violation of the New York Services for Victims of Human Trafficking against all defendants. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. Plaintiff is a victim of sex trafficking within the meaning of NY penal law and is therefore entitled to bring a civil action under New York social service. The defendant's acts and omissions taken separately and or together as outlined above constitute a violation of NY social service. Specifically, defendant Sean Combs perpetrated sex trafficking of Miss Ventura by requiring her to engage in forced in the state of New York, and all defendants benefited from Mr. Combs' venture by holding Miss Ventura, an artist signed with defendant Bad Boy Records and otherwise employed by defendant Doe corporations, captive to Mr. Combs' demands and desires. At all relevant times, defendants participated in and facilitated in harboring and transportation of plaintiff for purposes for sex induced by force, fraud, or coercion. The defendant corporations have financially and otherwise benefited as a result of these acts and omissions by keeping Mr. Combs, the volatile and explosive owner of the defendant corporations, satisfied. They benefited from facilitating his behavior to the extent it kept the mercurial music mogul happy, and it kept Miss Ventura obedient to Mr. Combs and the corporation's interest. As a direct and proximate result of the defendant's unlawful conduct, as alleged herein above, plaintiff has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress, and anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and consequential damages. Plaintiff also seeks reasonable attorney's fees as provided under NY Social Serve. Third cause of action, violation of the California Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Plaintiff repeats and alleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs, if fully set forth herein. I truly believe that each one of these are copies. They're copies. So we're going to skip these because they're literally copies. And the fourth cause of action was in performing the conduct described above, defendant committed a battery against plaintiff because he intentionally engaged in unlawful, intentional, and offensive touching or application of force to plaintiff's person. That's the battery. But everything here, okay, this is new. The conduct of Mr. Combs described above was willful, wanton, and malicious. At all relevant times, Mr. Combs acted with conscious disregard of plaintiff's rights and feelings, acted with the knowledge of or with reckless disregard for the fact that his conduct was certain to cause injury and or humiliation to plaintiff, and intended to cause fear, physical injury, and or pain and suffering to plaintiff. By virtue of the foregoing, plaintiff is entitled to recover punitive and exemplary damages from Mr. Combs according to proof at trial. This action is timely because it falls within CPLR and is brought during the 1-year time period set forth in that section. The claims brought herein allege intentional and negligent acts or omissions for physical, psychological, and other injuries suffered as a result of conduct that would constitute offenses as defined in Article 130 of the New York Penal Law, and such acts and or omissions were committed against Ms. Ventura when she was over 18 years of age. The action also falls within California's adult abuse law and is brought during the 3-year time period set forth in that action. The fifth cause of action is SA pursuant to the California SA Abuse and Cover-Up Accountability Act. Plaintiff repeats and alleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs, as if fully set forth herein. Defendant Mr. Combs subjected plaintiff to abuse, battery, and forcible act of penetration, as defined in Cal Penal Code. In doing so, he intended to and did cause harmful and offensive contact with their person and place them in imminent apprehension of such contact. Defendant corporations were entities engaged in a cover-up as defined in Cal Civil Code because defendant corporations took concerted efforts to hide evidence relating to the above essays that incentivized individuals to remain silent or prevented information relating to the essays from becoming public. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful conduct, as alleged here and above, plaintiff has suffered the physical injury, the severe emotional distress, the anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and consequential damages. Sixth cause of action, violation of the Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Act. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. The above described conduct of Mr. Combs, including but not limited to Mr. Combs' repeated and sexual assaults of plaintiff in New York City, constitutes a crime of violence and a crime of violence motivated by gender against plaintiff as defined by the New York City VGM VPL. The above described conduct of defendant Mr. Combs, including but not limited to Mr. Combs' repeated physical and essays of plaintiff in NYC, constitutes a crime of violence against plaintiff and a crime of violence motivated by gender as defined in 10-1103. The term crime of violence means an act or series of acts that would constitute a misdemeanor or felony against a person as defined in state or federal law, that would constitute a misdemeanor or felony against property as defined in state or federal law if the conduct presents a serious risk of physical injury to another. Whether or not those acts have physically resulted in criminal charges, prosecution, or conviction. The term crime of violence motivated by gender means a crime of violence committed because of gender on the basis of gender and due at least in part to an animus based on the victim's gender. Defendant corporations enabled Mr. Combs' commission of the crime of violence motivated by gender and are therefore also liable under the VGM VPL. As a direct and proximate result of the aforementioned crime of violence and gender motivated violence, plaintiff has sustained and will continue to sustain monetary damages, physical injury, pain and suffering, serious psychological and emotional distress, entitling her to an award of compensatory and punitive damages, injunctive and declaratory relief, attorney's fees and costs, and other remedies as this court may deem appropriate damages as set forth in 10-1104. The above described conduct of defendant Mr. Combs constitutes a offense as defined in Article 130 of New York Penal Law. Pursuant to 10-1105A, his cause of action is timely because it commenced within 2 years and 6 months of September 1st, 2022. Seventh cause of action, harassment, gender discrimination, and hostile work environment under New York State human rights law. Plaintiff repeats and alleges every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. Defendants discriminated against plaintiff on the basis of her gender in violating of the NYSHRL by subjecting plaintiff to disparate treatment based upon her gender, including but not limited to subjecting her to sexual assault or harassment and a hostile work environment. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful discriminatory conduct in violation of the NYSHRL, plaintiff has suffered and continues to suffer monetary and or economic harm for which she is entitled to an award of monetary damages and other relief. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful discriminatory conduct in violation of the NYSHRL, plaintiff has suffered and continues to suffer severe mental anguish and emotional distress for which she is entitled to an award of monetary damages and other relief. Defendant's unlawful and discriminatory actions were intentional, done with malice, and or showed a deliberate, willful, wanton, and reckless indifference to plaintiff's rights under the NYSHRL, for which plaintiff is entitled to an award of punitive damage. This action is timely because it falls within the CPLR 214 and is brought during the 1 year time period set forth in that action. That section. The claims brought herein allege intentional and negligent acts and or omissions for the physical, psychological, and other injuries suffered as a result of conduct that would constitute sexual offenses as defined in Article 130 of the New York Penal Law, such as acts and or omissions that were committed against Ms. Ventura when she was over 18 years of age. Eighth cause of action, harassment, gender discrimination, hostile work environment under New York City Human Rights Law, NYC Amendment Code. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. Defendants have discriminated against plaintiff on the basis of her gender in violation of the NYCHRL by subjecting plaintiff to the disparate treatment based upon her gender, including but not limited to subjecting her to sexual assault and or harassment, rape, and a hostile work environment. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful and discriminatory conduct in violation of the NYCHRL, plaintiff has suffered and continues to suffer monetary and or economic harm, for which she is entitled to an award of monetary damages and other relief. Wherefore, plaintiff prays judgment be entered in her favor against defendants, and each of them as follows. For a money judgment representing compensatory damages, including consequential damages, lost wages, earning, and all other sums of money, together with interest on these amounts according to proof. For a money judgment for mental pain and anguish and severe emotional distress, according to proof. For punitive and exemplary damages, according to proof. For attorney's fees and costs. For prejudgment and post-judgment interest. And for such other further relief as the court may deem just and proper. November 16th, 2023. Respectfully signed, Wigder LLP. With the emails to go. Sorry guys, I know the ending here was a lot. The causes of action were a lot. I just kind of wanted to break those down. There were 8 causes of action that caused her to file these lawsuits, and I think the attorneys dotted their I's and crossed their T's. You know, they stated all of the laws that this applied to, and they settled the next day within 24 hours, as they should have, because there's so much proof out there, I'm sure. So, and it's scandalous because it came out of nowhere, right? Nobody saw this coming. Cassie wasn't dropping hints about Diddy throughout the years. Nobody just saw that coming. It just kind of like, boom. And everybody started reading it. It was like, what? And then him settling the next day. You know, it's not an admission of guilt, but if somebody accused me of doing this and asked me for millions of dollars and I didn't do this, there's no way I'm giving them millions of dollars. So the word on the street is she asked you for the millions and you said no, and that's why she did this. She didn't even want to make it public. She just asked you for the millions in private. So you go on TV and give her you shout her out on TV and you think that's worth her time? Thank you for holding me down. You think that's worth her time? That probably pissed her off. And she's like, I asked you to pay me. I could have had you arrested. But I asked you to pay me for my time. I asked you to pay me for my mental anguish. I asked you to pay me for the years of therapy, the years of my life that were taken away. You owe me. I was arm candy. I was making you look good when I knew the real you. So I want my money. And you told her no? You've lost way more now. Companies don't want to work with Diddy, as they like. Who wants that as their spokesperson now? And the thing is, if he looks back in his mind and thinks about a year from today, he probably is like, I should have just gave her the money. It would have never came out. Or maybe it would have, but not as explosive as it came out. She might have been like, yeah, we had a bad relationship, but he tried to make things better at the end. You know, it was definitely a money-motivated lawsuit, but she deserves it. He owes her. He owes her more. And that's my unfiltered opinion. He owes her more money. And then, on top of that, more people are coming out with lawsuits, with allegations, crazy allegations about drugging, crazy allegations about things that he has done to them, that his sons have done. And it's like, why didn't you just give Cassie what you owed her? You could never pay her what you owe her. You're not even worth that much. Well, why didn't you give her some money so she could just try to forget or scrub as much of that from her memory as she could? Now here we are. You're exposed. And you're literally, the worst word they can use for somebody that's rose to fame, that's no longer, is disgraced. Is that the word? Disgraced? Yeah, that's what they're calling you. Disgraced. That is horrible. That's horrible. Disgraced. Well, you don't come back from being disgraced. When somebody say, oh, the disgraced singer, the disgraced actor, Chris Brown isn't even disgraced. And we saw Rihanna's face. We didn't even see it. I'm not going to even bring Chris Brown up. This isn't about him. This isn't about him. We're going to leave our opinions of the Chris Brown situation alone. Because truth of the matter is, physically, mentally, emotionally, all of you know an abuser. And all of you love an abuser, right? Some of you might have been an abuser. But to just so callously, for years and years and years and years and years and years and years, think you're going to get away with it because you have the millions to shovel the dirt over your victims' heads is quite frankly harrowing and disturbing. So it's a learning lesson, you know? And not to even say all this trafficking allegations they got going on, that's very illegal. It happened to R. Kelly. R. Kelly is also disgraced. Disgraced is something that you cannot come back from. And I hate to say it like that. But disgraced is where somebody says your name and they think about all the bad things you've done before they think about all the good things you've done. I'm so terribly sorry that it happened to Cassie this way, that she had to be undercover, but she's the mogul now. It's like checkmate now, right? I feel sorry for you. I truly do. And it's like, how can you feel sorry for somebody who's been such a monster and all this? You have it all. You have it all. But then again, you have nothing. And how do you think Cassie felt when she was on that ground? It's like the roles just reversed. And this is a good one, guys. This is a good scandal. The lawsuit was perfectly executed. The lawyers didn't miss a dot on any I, a cross on any T. Beautiful job. Beautiful job. Things like this are what got me interested in law when I was in high school and things of that nature. Just the sheer storytelling, the sheer argument in it all. Because there's sides to everything. But guys, I want your opinions down in the comments below. I want your opinions down on the comments below. Can Sean Combs come back from this? Do you think we should see Cassie in the limelight now, or should she just kind of take her time to heal and stay out of the limelight? A lot of people want to hear from her, but it's not like we can hear anything. They settled this, so she can't speak on anything that's going on with this. So just give me your opinions on this, and I want to know what you guys think. I enjoyed covering this. I enjoyed reading it from end to end for you guys. And I'm really going to enjoy making the next video, doing the research. Thank you guys. I appreciate you all. And let's grow the channel. Please subscribe. Please follow. Please like. Tell a friend to tell a friend. I hear YouTubers say that. Tell a friend to tell a friend. So tell a friend to tell a friend. And we're going to run this channel up. We're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep sharing. We're going to keep talking. until somebody hears it. Thank you guys so much. This has been Lindsay Unfiltered. Have a great rest of your day.